Welcome to Spoken Injustice, where we put the criminal justice system in the dock. In many of our videos, we have often ended by asking whether it might be time to rethink the meaning of justice. Today, I want to focus on that thought and take you on a journey with me. While the ideas may initially seem abstract, my hope is that by the end they will feel both more practical and achievable. More specifically, I want to examine a question that sits under the surface of almost every debate about crime, punishment and justice in the UK. What if the way we speak about crime shapes the way we think about crime and shapes how our justice system behaves? Now, bear with me with this. This idea came to me while planning content for the week. It's strange, once my brain switches into analysis mode, it starts wandering down unusual paths. And this time, that path led me straight into one of the most overlooked forces shaping our entire justice culture: language. Inspired by Lera Boroditsky's work on how language shapes thought, I started asking myself, if language influences how individuals think, could it also influence how an entire system thinks? Could our instinctive linguistic habits be contributing to investigative failures, wrongful convictions, and a national obsession with punishment? Yep, brace yourself. Today we're going deep. Lera Boroditsky, a cognitive scientist, says language isn't just about describing things. It actually shapes how we think. So I have linked a TED talk she gave a few years ago that explains this really well. So it appears that different languages highlight different aspects of events. Some languages emphasize context, others emphasize consequences. Well, English language appears to emphasize agents, the person doing the action. So in English language, the focus is on who did something rather than what happened. Now, apply that to crime. English language pushes us to ask who did it before we ask what happened, why did it happen, could this have occurred differently, what systemic factors created the conditions. This agent-first framing doesn't just shape casual conversation. It can shape policing, media reporting, public reaction, prosecution strategies, political rhetoric, and critically, how blame is distributed. When a system built on human judgment is conditioned through language to look for culprits, it often finds them, sometimes too quickly. To see the dangers of this suspect-first mindset, we don't need hypotheticals. We have decades of real UK cases where the system gravitated toward guilt instead of truth. To use classical examples, known by many, let's think at the Birmingham 6 and the Guildford 4 cases. In the 1970s, under pressure to deliver results after IRA bombings, investigators rushed to frame the cases around individuals who fit the story. The results, we all know: forced confessions, dubious forensics, years lost to wrong imprisonment. The narrative finds the bombers dominated over the event analysis. When a system thinks in terms of culprits, it prioritizes finding a who over understanding the what and why. And language, now we know, sustains that bias. Now, is this what happened in the Lucy Letby case? From the outset, headlines used language like killer nurse, evil, monster. These labels reflect our linguistic default to focus intensely on the agent, the individual, the villain. And in doing so, public narrative quickly centers on the person, not the context. Because the narrative was framed almost entirely around a single evil actor, many people engaged with the case primarily through a lens of blame, punishment, and moral judgment, rather than considering the potential systemic failures. Overlooking these systemic factors carries significant risks. Not only can it lead to miscarriages of justice, where the wrong individual is blamed, but it can also create the illusion that a crime occurred when in fact none did. The post office scandal provides a striking example of this phenomenon. By focusing solely on individual culpability and ignoring systemic flaws, countless innocent people were wrongfully accused, punished, and had their life upended, while the broader structural issues remained unaddressed. This case underscores the critical importance of examining both individual actions and systemic contexts when seeking justice. When a justice system, media ecosystem, and national psyche all orient toward finding a person to blame, several consequences follow. 1. Miscarriages of justice become more likely. History shows that when the pressure to identify a culprit dominates, investigative errors rise. 2. Systemic causes of crime go unexamined. We ask who is guilty before asking what circumstances produced this event, what institutional failures allowed it, what social conditions contributed. 3. Policy becomes punishment-driven rather than prevention-driven, rather than rehabilitation-driven, rather than reform-driven. 4. Public discourse becomes moralistic rather than analytical. We reach for words like evil, monster. Those labels feel satisfying, but they close down thought. Once a suspect becomes a villain, the system stops asking questions. Now, imagine an alternative justice culture, one that begins not with who did this, but with what happened, why did it happen, what systemic pressures contributed, how do we prevent this from happening again? Imagine if our justice system valued understanding as much as punishment. This doesn't remove accountability, it enhances it, because accountability without understanding does nothing to change the world that produced the crime. Language isn't just a tool we use, It's a tool that uses us. It shapes our expectations, our instincts, our institutions, even our systems of justice. If language shapes thought and thought influences systems, then the way we talk about crime matters. Maybe it's time to ask ourselves as a society, do we want a justice system built around blame, retribution and punishment, or one built around understanding, prevention and reform? What would happen if we shifted our focus? What if instead of centering punishment, we centered understanding? Would we begin to ask more meaningful questions about the root causes of crime, poverty, trauma, lack of opportunity, social isolation, and invest more energy in preventing crime before it happens rather than punishing it after the fact? It's an intriguing thought that by changing the way we think and talk about crime, we might change the way we respond to it altogether. So I want to challenge you, my viewers, and myself, to rethink our usual way of thinking. Instead of instinctively asking who did it when we hear about a crime, let's first ask, did a crime actually occur? And if it did, then let's go further and ask, what kind of world produced this crime? By doing so, we take an important step towards preventing miscarriages of justice. When we focus on understanding the broader context and the systemic complexities involved, we reduce the risk of wrongly interpreting events as crimes or of identifying the wrong person. And if after careful examination we determine that a crime has indeed occurred and we have identified the correct individual or individuals responsible, this approach allows us to connect accountability with rehabilitation, helping to break this cycle that leads to further crime. Because if we change the questions we ask, we may ultimately change what justice truly means. I hope you found this video thought-provoking. I love to hear your perspective. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. But that's all for today. Don't forget to support the channel by liking and sharing this video and by subscribing to our channel. Join us again as we sit and rise in this unique trial.